Bill Belichick is making a triumphant return to Montlake.
You are Locked On Huskies, your daily podcast on the Washington Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into another edition of the Locked On Huskies podcast. I'm Roman Tomashoff. That's Lars Hanson. He's site editor with Athlon Sports Inside the Huskies. I'm the site editor with Huskies Wire. Thank you for making this your first watch or first listen today, as we are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Lars, we got a really fun show. We're going to give the everydayers everything that they need to watch out for throughout fall camp. We got some physical standouts from the first day of practice because it was a day of learning, a day of teaching. There wasn't a whole lot of team action, that we could really report on from that. But our Locked On Huskies insiders got a nice little taste of, some of the stuff that we'll be dropping on there. And, check out the link down in the description below if you want to sign up and check it out with a 2-week free trial. And Lars, the biggest news of the day, though, as we were standing on the sidelines, I know you saw my jaw drop when I saw this news that Montlake Futures is going to be hosting an exclusive NIL fundraising dinner with the one, the only, the 8-time Super Bowl champion, Mr. Bill.
There's nobody that does introductions like you do that Bill would be proud of that. But it is something that we had already been hearing that Michael Lombardi, Bill Belichick, and a few of the other, Belichick and friends were already coming out, I believe, sometime next week or within the next 10 days to come out to a few practices. What we did not know was the Montlake Futures tie-in with it all. And I think that, to me, says a lot more about what Bill's involvement is with the program, but also kind of a shout out to his son because he knows it's for the betterment of his kid. If his kid is able to recruit better players, he'll be a better coach. And it's the old Saban adage, I can't coach terrible players, but if you get me really good players, I can turn them into great players. But if you give me a bunch of scrubs, I'm not going to look great coaching scrubs. So in a way, it's Bill kind of doing his son a solid, doing Jedd a solid. And I mean, man, that if you have the opportunity to go to that dinner, I would almost rather go to that than the coaching clinic, because I wonder what the difference in setting is, because Bill Belichick at the coaching clinic in April with John Schneider, Mike McDonald, everybody that came in for that. You could understand if you're a football coach, I want to go to that. I want to take notes. I want everything that Bill has to say. But imagine Bill with a glass of Pinot and a little steak and just talking about whatever you want to talk with Bill Belichick about. I'm sure you would have a field day at that.
They would have to pick me up and carry me out of the event. That's a whole separate discussion, because all I know is no matter when it is, no matter where it is, no matter just anything that's going on, I will be there. I want to be there. I want to just make sure I can take in just everything that goes along with that. And yeah, no, I like everything that you said there, because as you mentioned, there was an ESPN report a couple of weeks ago that Kyle Shanahan, San Francisco 49ers head coach, offered him a job in whatever role he wanted to play. And truly, he was just like, yeah, whatever you want to do, come in whenever you want, do whatever you want. And just like the role that everybody aspires to have in whatever it is of their field, because that he'd be compensated fairly well for that. And Bill turned him down. He said, not really interested in that. And one thing that the article cited is that Bill was more interested in helping his son and coming up to the University of Washington, doing stuff with that. And now we know he's also going to venture into the media space. He's got a couple different, things that he's working on there. I'm really excited about the thing he's doing with another company that is going to be, a film breakdown, basically. I think that's going to be really, really cool. And I'm certainly going to be tuning into that, because I honestly think that there's going to be some Washington tape involved in all that. It's where he's going to, explain a little bit about what his defense is doing on that side of things, and just, what Steve's defense is, where, maybe he took inspiration from Bill, that sort of stuff as well. And just to see this, it's all, you can talk about the recruiting aspect and Jedd Fisch's whole be a pro thing. You can talk about just the aura of having Bill Belichick around and this NFL experienced coaching staff, all that sort of stuff as well. But the biggest thing that we can talk about with this is the NIL aspect, because, I know all the everydayers know I'm a huge Patriots fans. With all due respect to all the Seahawks fans out there, are you telling me you don't want to, give some money to Montlake Futures if you're a Huskies fan as well? and get to spend an hour listening to Bill Belichick talk about football and get to ask him whatever you want. I don't think that there's any amount of money that I wouldn't give to do that.
No, and I think that's why it's such an appealing sell, because it's a rare opportunity, right? And if Bill, think about it, in any other year, Bill Belichick would still be coaching in the NFL. Well, I mean, maybe you would push back on that, knowing how big of a Patriots fan you are and the direction that franchise was heading under Bill Belichick. But in the grand scheme of things, who wouldn't, to your point, want to have that opportunity to learn from an 8-time Super Bowl champion? And just, I mean, the amount of how many times have we heard people pay, $1,000, $10,000 for a photo with a celebrity, and you actually get to have
autograph or whatever else? Yeah,
right. And in this situation, it sounds like you're going to be able to actually, have a chance to engage with him, not just, hey, nice to meet you, shake hands, cool, here's $1,000, cool. Keep it moving, it's not a conveyor. Bill Belichick doesn't strike me as a conveyor belt type of guy where I want to make an appearance fee and just shake hands and call it. Bill's not a shaking hands kind of guy. Bill's I'm going to sit at the head of the table. Everybody can talk. You can ask me questions. Nobody will shake my hand, but we'll I'm above you, but I'm still willing to engage with you and all those sort of things. But I'm also curious to see, what does this do for Montlake Futures? Is this an opening of, does Pete Carroll become the next one? Where I'm sure, speaking to your point about Seahawks fans, I'm sure, hey, why not? Or if you're a USC fan back in the day and you want to chum it up with Pete Carroll and you live in Seattle, why not? And there's a long list of guys that you can start to go down that list where Jedd knows either from the NFL or in college. And I think the key with that is then with those resources, does that go towards the 25 class? Does that go towards next season's transfer portal recruiting? How do we all do this in the modern day of college football? But either way, we're talking about the first-year head coach in Jedd Fisch doing several first-time events, where he had the media day yesterday with over 12 players, I think, plus the entire coaching staff. Yes. Over 12 is what I'm saying. 12 plus coaches and the entire coaching staff. And then on top of that, you're talking about the Lou at the Lake. You're talking about all these other things that Jedd is bringing to Washington. This is just another evolution of that.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I think that's really what the most special part of all this is, I know there are certain people in the media space who do not get shout outs on the show that will say what they will about Jedd Fisch, but he's followed through on all these things. He said, yeah, we're going to sell the NFL. We're going to sell this. We're going to sell that. And he's done a really good job of that. He's done a really good job where, when Steve Belichick came in, it was just kind of like, obviously there was all this underlying stuff of, oh, well, is this just a ploy to do this or a ploy to do that? But no, Steve's really good at his job. Steve wouldn't have gotten this job if he wasn't a fantastic defensive coordinator. And on top of that, Jedd seemed to understand what the added benefits of doing that were. And of course, everything works out with Bill, just walking away from Patriots certainly at the right time. But now he's just doing this thing where he's exploring other avenues. And it seems like he's genuinely passionate about that. And of course, he's genuinely passionate about his family and all those sorts of things. And the fact that this is all intersected at the University of Washington is something that shouldn't be taken lightly. And it's something that it's the reason we're leading the show with it, is because it's a really important event. And it's something that it's certainly not going to last forever. So while it's here, you got to enjoy it. You got to soak it up, and you have to take advantage of these opportunities. And, let's say Jedd is here for 3-4 years and Steve's with him the whole time. That's still going to be a very special time where, and maybe it leaves a lasting impact on Bill, and he wants to keep coming back. He truly gets involved because you see him wearing UW stuff at Celtics games. You see him wearing UW stuff just as part of his daily life now, which is just one of the coolest and craziest parts of all this, that it's just intersected in that way. And Lars, with that being said, let's just jump into some of the physical standouts from the first day of practice. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guaranteed, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets, which, as I've said, is great news for me. I'm hitting up the Mariners this weekend. I'm going to watch them take on the Phillies on Saturday afternoon, and I'm so excited to use the Game Time app because there's no better place to find all the last-minute deals. You can save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and so much more. You got flash deals. You can save even more exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or event with their all-in pricing. You can toggle this feature to show cover the total upfront with no surprise fees at checkout. And you get seat views. You can get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. You can take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKDOWNCollege for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. So Lars, as we said in the opener, it was I want to say low stress day at practice, where a lot of it, there was a lot of special teams work, there was a lot of walkthrough stuff, and there was a lot of half speed stuff, which Jedd Fisch had a couple of these days in the spring. Those were the first couple of days of the spring as well, where he called them teaching days, just days of learning, where, as he said at media day, there are 30 plus new faces on this roster that were not around for spring practice. So it's understandable. It's just something that's going to happen. That's something that's part of all this, and that's okay. So we didn't get a lot of standouts of, or like a lot of takeaways in terms of, I think this guy's going to fit in the offense in this way. This guy's going to fit in the offense in that way, where those are going to come over the next couple of weeks. But one thing that really always stands out on the first day, and it's something that when we're hanging out on the sidelines, doing all our things, sitting there in the stands, taking notes, doing whatever, something that really pops out is body types. We did this in the spring as well. We talked about some of the body types that are really important that, do different things. And I feel that one guy that no matter where you were standing on the field, you could not miss was new defensive tackle Logan Sagapolu.
Yeah. It was one of those where the defensive linemen, the front seven players were in the east end zone, on the east side of the field when you look at Husky Stadium from where we're sitting. And I'm like, okay, look at the roster. 97 is Logan. Look up. There he is. It didn't even, and by the way, we're talking about in between, Omar Khan and some of these other somewhat bigger guys, but nowhere near what Logan Sagapolu was. And it's the callback to what I asked Jason Concrusi at Media Day yesterday, where it's, so how did that work? And what are your thoughts? And he's like, I've always wanted to have Logan as a nose tackle. I recruited him out of high school as a nose tackle, and you just see the body type. And to me, the other thing is he's obviously a guy that you can just, plug that middle gap and that B gap and really just have him eat two linemen up. But I do think there is a slight secret to, he does have a little bit of a pass rush. Now, it's not Javon Parker, or it's not anywhere near an edge rusher by any means, but I do think he is a guy that could move the pocket a little bit. So when you talk about not just a big, road grading nose guard that's just going to sit there and not do much, and then you have to get pressure with edges, I think that's an interesting part of his game. And he's a sneaky athlete, because when you look at his size, it's like 6'2", 368 or something like that. And you think 368 already, you're like, okay, so probably can't move that quickly. And I'm not saying quick, but he's not a snail, and he's a massive unit. That's if you're looking for a way to describe him, the old what is it, brick outhouse sort of thing, the immovable object, whichever one you want to pick, either one describes Logan to a T.
I feel like we need to get a nickname for him. Everydayers, drop some potential nicknames for him down in the comments. I feel like that'd be a lot of fun, because I just think that'd be just a lot of fun to say, because you're absolutely right. You look up, you look at him, and you just say, oh yeah, no, that's him. Even if you didn't know the number, that's the dude who's listed at 370 pounds, which, it's something we talked about on the show the other day. It's, you haven't had, because, I certainly don't expect him to be a major factor in the pass rush where, they know it's 3rd and 13. We're going to send Logan out there. That's certainly not going to be his game. That's not his role. And that's okay. That's okay. But when it's 3rd and 1, when it's 4th and inches, that dude's going to be in the middle. That's great, because I love Titialii. Titialii was a one gap player. MJ Ale, as good as he was 1.5 gap. He wasn't as wide and as built as Logan is, which again is okay. They're different players. They're different styles. They do different things. But when I look at Logan, I just see somebody who, when you have to go face the Wisconsins of the world and the Iowas and the teams that just want to run the ball down your throat, that dude's going to play 50 snaps. because that's just the world that you want to play him in, where he's just not going to move guys. You put him, you put Jacob Bandis out there, and you got a couple of nice run stuffers where he's just somebody who can eat up multiple gaps on one play, and he's going to demand those double teams because you can't block somebody who's that big with one dude. And speaking of blocking, Lars, I just want to flip side of the line here real fast, because another guy who started the same way was D'Angelo Titialii, where you and I saw him in the spring. Remember, when we were recording a show while he committed, and because we saw him at practice that day, and it was okay. Yeah. We saw the potential, we saw it, and he has put on a lot of weight, and in a good way.
Yeah, and that was one thing he had told me about a couple weeks after he committed, where he's like, no, this is my opportunity to prove that I actually belong at this, Big Ten level, and I'm going to do everything in my power to get myself in a position to win a starting job. At the time, we didn't even know Landon was going to factor into this equation, with or without Landon. Again, obviously that's a significant caveat there, but even without Landon, I should say, D'Angelo, I think, man, he really grew into a power 4 lineman over this offseason. I think, to me, had he still been closer to that Portland State weight, I would have given the edge, maybe slide him over to guard and you put somebody a little more stout at center. But man, he seems like, I told you at practice, where it's a bigger Nick Harris, where they're about the same height. D'Angelo's a little bit bigger, I think, than Nick, maybe by an inch or two, but he's also a lot thicker. And you talk about, we'll talk about Logan on the defensive side moving guys. D'Angelo ain't going to get moved that easily. And I think but this is also why when you talk about setting yourself up for the Big Ten and going into some of these environments, having that in a daily environment, D'Angelo versus Logan daily in practice is going to make both those guys better when you're coming into the Big Ten schedule and you're going against, not Ohio State this year, but Michigan and Indiana and Rutgers and all these, and Iowa and et cetera down the list. That's why you have to have that competition in practice. So you're not looking strong deceivingly in practice and then weak in the games. You could look weak in practice, but that actually sets you up better for the games because you've gone against, honestly, potentially better competition in practice. And that, to me, again, day one, we're not really going to see a ton, but when you just look at what D'Angelo brings and the size profile that he has, we'll see where he ends up sorting out, but you can see he's going to be a tough move whether he plays guard or center.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the things that, to go along with that, because not only did we feel he needed to add some weight, but it's just kind of where does he fit? And now I don't think it matters. Where it's, in a similar way to what we were thinking about with Parker Brailsford early on last season, where it's, all right, where does he fit? And at right guard, it was, okay, yeah, no, this works. And then at center, obviously, oh, wait, oh, no, yeah, this is certainly his best fit, as we were well aware. But it's sort of a similar thing where we're going to see a lot of him at guard. We're probably going to see a lot of him at center. We'll see when Landon, returns to full strength, full health, and just fully in the rotation. But for the time being, I feel after looking at the offensive line, and there's another guy I want to get to later on, but after just looking at the offensive line and just seeing, obviously, as Jedd said at Media Day, got 15 scholarship guys, there's 17 in the room now, you feel so much better about where it is. Where Maximus McCree is a guy that I wanted to make sure got a little shout out here, where he looks a lot better than a lot heavier than the 275 he was listed at when he came in. Where it feels like those measurements might have been done in late June, early July. And we're at the point now where it's okay. Yeah, they've certainly put on a lot of weight working with Tyler Owens, the entire strength staff since that point. And one other guy who really stood out to me especially when we were standing on the sideline, where he might not be listed as the heaviest guy in the room, but certainly has the ideal profile for the position, is safety Cameron Broussard.
Yeah, that one, to me, when you just watch it, I was trying to remember number 8. Who's number 8? Who's number 8? Oh yeah, it's Cam, because the ironic part is you see Justin Harrington, you're like, okay, I see him. I see what we're thinking about there. But when you talk about who's that second safety, that true ranger that can also hit and cover and pick and do everything, not at the nickel, but next to either Cam Fab or Raquel or whoever ends up starting next to him. I'm not saying Cam starts. I'm just saying in a hypothetical world. That's where you can see that profile. I just can envision Cam and Cam next to each other, one with a K, one with a C. That, to me, you're talking about size, length, athleticism to cover sideline to sideline. And I think the thing they can both do is they can also cover it in the box as well. So you're talking about sideline to sideline safeties and box to box safeties. That to me, when you put out those cornerbacks on an island, it's going to be a beautiful sight to see if it can come together. And the key is if it can come together.
Right. And well, no, you're right. Cause that's one thing that I know we've been pushing on this show all summer long is that Cameron Broussard is going to have a real shot to start. And obviously the first thing you want to see is, does he line up physically? Cause that's what all the coaches were saying. All the coaches were saying over the last couple of days, it's, hey, yeah, we want to make sure that, these guys are in shape. These guys can move. Cause this is the first time we get to watch a lot of them in person. So you want to make sure that everything is lining up exactly how you thought it would when you're watching them on tape and you're recruiting them. And just the more that I look at it with Cam Broussard, he certainly seems like he's going to fit that Belichick mold really well, where he can, he can be a single high safety if you need him to. You need him to walk down to the box. He can do all these things in a lot of, the same ways that Justin Harrington can as well. And just having a lot of depth at the position where, you and I really like Peyton Waters. We like Raheem Wright, Paul Menke, Rashawn Clark, all the true freshmen they brought in. But you don't want to rely on them. And now that you have two guys who, can both move on after the season, where I believe Cam Broussard has one more year of eligibility if he wants it, but having a couple of more experienced guys, plus having Tristan Dunn in that room, plus having all the freshmen, now all of a sudden you're saying, okay, yeah, we're really, really comfortable on the back end of this defense. And Lars, that being said, we got a lot of things that we want to make sure we're keeping our eye on this fall. Right after a message from our friends over at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors is everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. On the parts you need at the prices you want. It's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. Lars, when you're sitting in the stands today, when you're standing on the field, what was the number one thing that you said, ooh, this is something I'm going to keep an eye on for the next month?
Well, there's a lot to work with, first of all. But I think the one that stands out to me, and again, I'm just going to keep harping on it until proven otherwise, and it's the running backs. Because to me, when you look at, I don't know if you mentioned, there's a couple people that pointed out. I know you, I'm going to credit you for this. Jonah Coleman looked a little bit leaner, is I think the word that I kind of suggested you use, even though we said trimmer, and it's like because he's still very strong, very stout, very all that. But I think being a little bit lighter will allow him to be better and take more hits, and also just kind of carry that weight and health throughout the season, especially with the pounding that position takes. But also we got to see Cameron Davis, full go and talk to him yesterday. And he's like, yeah, it might take me a couple of practices to shake the rust off. And I think that's kind of by design why Jedd wanted to have these first couple of days as some training install days before you get to practice 3. And it's like, okay, you guys learned the first 2 days. Now let's see what you can apply on day 3 when we all put it together. So we'll have a little bit better sense of the rotation. But I'm just looking at that room, and I think the combination, what I want to point out with that running back room, is just the diversity in body types. There's a lot of different body types in that room, and we're talking about D'Angalo, Sam Adams, the 2 freshmen, and that's the other thing. I think Jordan Washington looked, I don't want to say smaller than I thought, because to be fair, he was lined up against Milton Hopkins when I was looking at him. So the size, this comparison there is a little bit cruel, but I do think there's a role for Jordan on this team at some point this season. It won't be more than, I don't think there's going to be more than 4 games. Again, it seems like that's the perfect mark for a lot of these freshmen to hit, is get 4 games, figure out, it could be a different 4 than some of these other guys, but there's so much talent in that room. It's almost too talented to just have 2 or 3 guys, truly make a mark in that room. I think you're going to have to start to see even 4 or 5 guys in it, which will probably come, again, to tie this whole thing together with the theme of the day being on special teams. That's where a lot of these guys are going to have to make their mark, and so I'd be really intrigued to see if can Jordan, making it. We didn't get to see him a ton, in the return game in that respect, but is he able to make a mark there? Is Daniel Ngata able to make a mark there? Because you have so many talented backs, and you want to make sure Jonah Coleman is able to be healthy week 1 through week however many weeks you got, week 12? Losing count of
all the
point.
weeks.
But exactly. But it's one of those because, as we saw last season, if you have Jonah Coleman become Dylan Johnson, you need that second guy, which makes Cam Davis, being back fully healthy, ready to go day one, all the more important.
No, absolutely. So one thing on Jordan Washington, yeah, he certainly has some room to add weight, but my whole thing with him is if they're not going to catch him, if they're going to get the ball in his hands in space, nobody's going to catch that guy. That's like John Ross is a little undersized. Worked out for him pretty well. I'm not comparing the two, but the speed is similar. The speed is similar is what I'll say. And so the biggest thing for me was something I was looking at along the offensive line, where I have been a very big proponent of Justin Hilkema should be in the mix at left tackle. On day one, it didn't seem that way, just obviously, in terms of some of the scheme, some of the other things. But in terms of guys that we were looking at on the scout team, there was one person who was running with the top couple of groups on offense, you would say. And that was Paki Finau. And that was something where, Softy put something out a couple of days ago saying, yeah, he's up to 305. Or that was something I believe Jedd said at Media Day in Indianapolis. And that was really big news because when you watch Paki's tape, you just see an incredible athlete at the position. We're somebody who, like a lot of high school offensive linemen, needs to get some technique refined, needs to do a couple of different things. And we fully believe that he can grow into all of those things, especially, with some time under Brendan Carroll. And, if he's somebody who redshirts this year, that's fine. If the coaches have a different plan for him, then we believe is the best thing possible. That's fine. That's better. They know a little bit more about that than we do. Let's be real. But I think that watching him with the top couple groups on offense just says so much about not only, how much he might have developed over the summer, not just physically, but in terms of learning the playbook, learning technique, learning all those different things, but just in terms of how the coaches feel about him, which I think is really important because as we've talked about, especially at guard, there's going to be a lot of competition where we believe Guard Memolara will win out at left guard, but that doesn't mean he's not going to get pushed. And at right guard, it feels like Enoch Vamahai is the favorite right there, but that doesn't mean he's not going to get pushed by whoever it is, by Zach Henning, by D'Angelo Titialii, by Paki Finau, where all at the end of the day, it's all positive. It's all competition. It's all good. But seeing Paki as the one guy who was on that side of the field when they were doing some walkthroughs with, the starting offensive, unit and it was really the two deeps against the scout team defense, and the same thing on the other side, the scout offense versus the top couple of groups on defense. Seeing Paki on a completely different side than Hilkema, than Michael Watkins and some of the other guys just really said a lot to me.
Yeah, well, it's one thing Jedd said where he expects both Paki and Zach Henning to be contributors this season. And he said contributors, not starters, which is probably the safest indicator is, look, these guys are going to play 8 to 10 games, 6 to 10 to 8 games, depending on how many injuries, et cetera, et cetera. But clearly the point of that is the coaches already know what they've got in them. They just want to see how far along they can get in the season. But that's also why you bring in veterans, so you're not pigeonholing yourself into playing a redshirt freshman and a true freshman at a couple key positions as starters, even if you don't have any other options. And that's why you go out and get a Nook. That's why you go out and get D'Angelo, and obviously, guard comes back from injury, Landon comes back from injury, so it's 2 in-house additions right there. And I think it's also why it doesn't preclude guys like Hilkema and Boyajian is a little bit further back in that regard, but no disrespect to him, just because naturally he developed later in high school, he's going to develop later in college. But with that being said, you have all different types of players that I think are going to end up somehow factoring in, but I think there's a reason why they've been so adamant about Paki and Henning. I think they saw enough in the spring to say, okay, barring a massive setback or injury, which is basically Jedd's caveat for everything at this point, is injury and or until proven
something unforeseen.
Right, exactly. Until something comes out of left field, these guys are going to play. They're probably not going to start. Now, that, like I said, what was it? I'm not sure. Yesterday's show, today's show, yesterday's show or last week, where I'm not saying Paki has the inside track to start, but I certainly would not be surprised if he ends up being one of the first couple options off the bench at right guard throughout the season, just because it's kind of that Troy Fontana mode where he comes in as a guard, and then, hey, If he grows into a tackle 2 years down the line when McCree's gone, as a party's gone, and whoever else is there or not, then you could have that discussion. But for the time being, your problem is in the interior. Fix the interior. You won't. You don't even know who the left tackle is. The right tackle is fine. Left tackle is still being sorted out. But the real question comes up the middle, because if you can't stop up the middle, the tackles don't matter.
Right. Lars, is there anything else you're looking out for this fall camp?
I'm really intrigued, and this is a small one, and this is why I want to end on this. It's a weird one, but speaking of special teams and kind of, I'm really curious to see who ends up actually winning that job. And we didn't get a chance to see it today, but I do think that the combination of how much is Jedd going to punt, where is he going to find his sweet spot on the field, and then Cam McAllister, he had a really interesting 23 season where he was one of the better guys in terms of downing it inside there, but he didn't have a lot of kicks. He didn't have the best net, but he always seemed to kind of have like the perfect timed punts. Not always, but for the most part. And I'm curious, since neither of them are on scholarship and UW's got one scholarship to burn, does either one of them earn that in fall camp? I think that's something I'll be intrigued to see.
No, that's certainly something to watch. Shout out to our buddy Nick Lemkow, by the way, with the last word on college sports. He loves the punting battle, does a fantastic job tracking hang times when we're hanging out over there on practice. Just a little behind the scenes for the everydayers before we get out of here. And Lars, that being said, as always, thank you so much for being here. Thank you to all the everydayers for tuning in. We really do appreciate your constant support. If you want to check out so much more of what we have to offer, we're dishing out exclusive practice reports. We dropped a couple of things that I don't think we even got to on this show over for our Locked On Huskies insiders. The link is down in the description below. You get a free 2-week trial. After that, it's $4.99 a month. We're dropping all the interviews that we had at Media Day over there. We're going to be dropping some more on YouTube as well, just over the course of the next couple of weeks. So I want to make sure we get tons of content out there for you guys. But over on the insider program, you're also going to get exclusive practice reports, different little things, recruiting, just some rumors, things we might be hearing from around the program, along with exclusive, the ability to chat with us one-on-one, ask us any questions you might have. We're also doing Q&As like we did a couple of weeks ago on the show, where we're going to do those that are going to be unlisted, and you can only have access to those with the link, which is going to be sent out to all of our insiders. Again, check that out down in the description below. We really think you're going to like it. With that being said, thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, whether that's YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music. We're there. We're everywhere, updating the channel with new content every single day. So make sure you click that like button, click that little bell so you never miss when we post a new video. Get any questions, comments, concerns, drop them right down below in the comment section, along with your nickname for Logan Sagapolu. We'd love to hear some of those. If you're audio only, please leave us a 5-star review. It does help us out a lot. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll talk to you on Friday.